I'm Eliza Peters, 28 years old, and 3 months ago, I got the promotion I'd been working toward for 5 years. I should have been celebrating, but instead I was sitting in my car outside my apartment complex, crying so hard I couldn't catch my breath. My dad had just told me I didn't deserve a celebration for my achievement, and that was crushing enough. But what he did next was even worse. And what HR did after that changed everything. If you've ever had a family member try to sabotage your success because they couldn't handle your growth, please let me know where you're watching from, and subscribe to join others who understand this type of emotional abuse. Let me take you back to where this all started, because understanding my relationship with my dad requires knowing how I met the person who helped me see my worth in the first place, my mentor and now close friend, Dr. Patricia Valdez. It was October 2019. And I was a junior marketing coordinator at Pinnacle Digital Solutions, feeling completely lost in a sea of corporate politics and imposter syndrome. I'd been assigned to help coordinate the annual Client Appreciation Summit, which meant 14-hour days, coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, and a constant knot in my stomach from anxiety. The event was being held at the downtown Marriott, and I remember the smell of fresh flowers mixing with industrial carpet cleaner as I frantically arranged name tags at 6 in the morning. That's when Patricia walked in. She was our keynote speaker, the VP of Strategic Development at our biggest client, wearing a tailored navy blazer and carrying herself with the kind of confidence I desperately wanted to possess. What struck me wasn't just her professional presence, but how she stopped to genuinely thank each person setting up the venue. When she reached me fumbling with a box of conference folders that had spilled everywhere, she didn't just walk past. She knelt down in her expensive suit and helped me collect scattered papers, asking, "First big event coordination." When I nodded expecting judgment, she smiled and said, "The fact that you're here at dawn getting everything perfect tells me you care about excellence. That's rare." During her keynote about strategic innovation, I found myself taking notes not just on her business insights, but on how she commanded the room without diminishing anyone else. She made eye contact with people in the back rows, paused for genuine laughter, and when someone asked a challenging question, she didn't deflect. She said, "That's a brilliant point that I hadn't considered. Thank you for making me think differently." After the summit, she found me during cleanup and handed me her business card. "I see potential in you that I don't think you see in yourself yet. Would you be interested in grabbing coffee sometime? I'd love to hear about your career goals." I probably said yes a little too eagerly, but her warm laugh told me she understood. Our coffee meeting the following week turned into a mentoring relationship that slowly rebuilt my entire sense of self-worth. Patricia had a way of asking questions that made me dig deeper into my own thoughts. When I told her about my family's tendency to downplay my achievements, she didn't immediately jump to advice. Instead, she asked, "How does it feel in your body when someone dismisses something you're proud of?" That question unlocked something I'd been carrying for years, the physical weight of constant minimization. She taught me to notice when my shoulders tensed up during family phone calls, when my voice got smaller in meetings because I was anticipating criticism, and how I'd learned to celebrate my wins privately to avoid disappointment. Over the next 2 years, Patricia became more than a mentor. She became the supportive voice I'd never had. She celebrated my small victories, when I successfully presented to a difficult client, when I got assigned to lead a project team, when I finally spoke up in meetings instead of staying silent. She'd text me things like, "Saw your quarterly report presentation got praised in the company newsletter. Your strategic thinking is sharp," or "Remember when you thought you couldn't handle conflict? Look at how you navigated that vendor dispute last week." These weren't empty compliments. She'd point to specific examples of growth that I couldn't see in myself. When I got promoted to senior marketing strategist in January 2022, Patricia took me to lunch at this little Italian place she loved, Rossini's, where the owner knew her by name and the walls were covered in vintage family photos. She ordered champagne before our entrees arrived and raised her glass, saying, "To Eliza Peters, who earned every bit of this promotion through talent, hard work, and the courage to keep growing even when others tried to keep her small." I started crying right there at the table, not from sadness but from relief. This was what celebration was supposed to feel like, someone recognizing not just the achievement, but the journey it took to get there. By 2023, I'd found my rhythm both professionally and personally. My typical Tuesday started with a 6 a.m. yoga class at the studio near my apartment, where I'd finally learned to quiet the critical voice in my head for at least an hour. I'd grab my usual vanilla latte with oat milk from Corner Cafe, where Noah, the barista, had my order memorized and would sometimes slip me an extra shot when I looked particularly tired. My commute to Pinnacle involved a 15-minute walk through downtown, past the fountain where office workers ate lunch, and the food truck that made the best breakfast burritos in the city. At work, I had my own office with a window overlooking the park, walls covered with project timelines and client feedback that showed the impact of campaigns I'd developed. My team knew they could come to me with problems without judgment, and I'd earned a reputation for turning around struggling projects. Tuesday afternoons usually meant strategy meetings where I felt confident contributing ideas, and evenings were mine. Sometimes dinner with friends, sometimes reading business books that actually excited me instead of intimidated me, sometimes just Netflix and takeout from my favorite Thai place while working on my personal development blog. The contentment wasn't just professional. I'd started dating someone wonderful, Alex, who worked in graphic design and made me laugh until my stomach hurt. We'd spend Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, picking out ingredients for dinners we'd cooked together while playing music too loud and dancing in my tiny kitchen. Alex understood when I needed to process family phone calls afterward, never pushing me to just get over it or try to see their perspective. For the first time in my adult life, I felt stable, valued, and genuinely excited about my future. I was planning to apply for the Director of Marketing Strategy position when it opened up. Patricia and I had been strategizing for months. She'd helped me identify the skills I needed to develop, connected me with other leaders in the industry, and even introduced me to the CEO of a complementary company who offered insights on executive presence. We had a whole plan mapped out. I'd spend the next 6 months building my portfolio, taking on higher visibility projects, and positioning myself as the obvious internal candidate. But there were small warning signs I chose to ignore. During family calls, when I'd mention work successes, my dad would change the subject to my sister's children or my brother's new house. When I told him about leading a major client presentation, he'd respond with something like, "That's nice, honey. Did you hear your cousin got into law school?" When I shared that my boss had praised my innovative approach to a campaign, he'd ask if I was sure I wasn't overworking myself, suggesting maybe I should focus on finding balance instead of always pushing so hard. I rationalized these responses as his way of showing concern for my well-being. I told myself he just wanted me to have a life outside of work, that his generation didn't understand modern career development, that he was probably proud but didn't know how to express it. Looking back, I can see how I was constantly making excuses for behavior that left me feeling deflated after every conversation. The day that changed everything was a Thursday in March. I'd spent the morning in a crucial strategy meeting where the CEO announced they were fast-tracking the director position search due to an unexpected organizational restructuring. Instead of waiting 6 months, they wanted to fill the role in 6 weeks. My boss, Jennifer, pulled me aside afterward and said, "Eliza, I want you to know that you're my first choice for this role. Your client retention rates speak for themselves, and your team respects your leadership. I need you to prepare a presentation for the executive team next Friday." I felt this surge of excitement mixed with terror. This was happening faster than planned, but I was ready. I'd been preparing for this opportunity for 2 years. I called Patricia immediately, and she could hear the energy in my voice. "This is your moment," she said. "Everything we've worked on has been building to this. You're going to crush that presentation." We spent the next hour on the phone, outlining key points and strategies. When I hung up, I felt invincible. That afternoon I called my parents to share the news. My mom answered, and I could hear the sound of their old television in the background, probably tuned to one of those courtroom shows she loved. "Mom, I have incredible news," I said, trying to contain my excitement. "I'm being considered for a director position at work. The presentation is next week, and if I get it, it comes with a 30% salary increase and my own team." There was a pause. Then my mom's cautious voice. "Oh, that's big news, honey. Let me get your father." I heard the phone clatter against their kitchen counter, the sound muffled as she called. "Robert? Eliza has news about work." When my dad picked up the extension, his voice carried that tone I knew too well, the one that meant he was already preparing to deflate whatever enthusiasm I'd brought to the conversation. "What's this about work?" he asked. Not exactly unfriendly, but not warm either. I repeated the news, adding details about how my boss had specifically chosen me, how this was recognition for 2 years of exceptional performance, how this could change the trajectory of my entire career. As I spoke, I could hear him breathing on the other end, and I found myself speaking faster, trying to fill the silence with more justification for why this was good news. "Well," he finally said, and I could practically hear him organizing his thoughts into the careful, measured response that would somehow diminish this moment. "I hope you're not getting ahead of yourself, Eliza. These things don't always work out the way we plan." That should have been my first warning. But I pushed forward. "Dad, I've been preparing for this for 2 years. My performance reviews are excellent. My client satisfaction scores are the highest in the department, and Jennifer specifically said she wants me for the role." "Jennifer can say whatever she wants, but ultimately these decisions get made above her pay grade," he replied. And I could hear my mother making agreeing sounds in the background. "I just don't want you to be disappointed if they decide to go with someone with more experience." The excitement I'd felt just an hour earlier began to deflate, but I tried to hold on to it. "Dad, I do have experience. I've been leading teams, managing major clients, developing strategies that have increased revenue. This promotion would be based on merit." "Eliza," he said, and his voice took on that patient tone he used when he thought I was being naive. "You're 28 years old. Director-level positions usually go to people with 10, 15 years of experience. You might want to consider whether you're really ready for that kind of responsibility." I felt my chest tighten, that familiar sensation of being made smaller during conversations with him. But something Patricia had taught me kicked in, the recognition that when someone consistently undermines your confidence, it says more about them than about you. "Dad, my age isn't a limitation here. My boss believes in my capabilities, and I've earned this opportunity. I'm just trying to help you be realistic," he said. "Getting too excited about things that might not happen only sets you up for disappointment. Maybe you should focus on doing well in your current role for a few more years before trying to climb the ladder so quickly." After I hung up, I sat in my car outside the coffee shop, where I'd stopped to make the call, feeling like someone had poured cold water over my excitement. This was supposed to be one of the biggest moments of my career, and instead of celebration, I got cautionary warnings and suggestions to lower my expectations. I called Patricia, who listened to the entire conversation recap and then said something that stuck with me. "Eliza, your father's response tells me everything I need to know about why you've struggled to see your own worth. But his limitations don't define your capabilities." The next week was a whirlwind of presentation preparation. I worked late every night, crafting the perfect strategic overview, gathering data that showcased my contributions to the company's growth, and practicing my delivery until I could present confidently without notes. Patricia met me for coffee twice that week, helping me anticipate executive-level questions and refining my key messages. By Thursday night, I felt ready. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzly, typical Pacific Northwest weather that matched my nervous energy. I wore my best suit, a charcoal gray pieces I'd bought specifically for important meetings, and arrived at the office an hour early to do a final run-through. The presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the executive conference room, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows and the massive table that always intimidated me. When I walked into that room, facing 5 executives including the CEO, I felt everything Patricia had taught me about owning my expertise click into place. My presentation flowed perfectly. I talked about client retention strategies I'd developed that had reduced churn by 15%, outlined a comprehensive plan for expanding our service offerings, and presented revenue projections that had the CFO taking notes. When they asked challenging questions, I answered with specific examples and concrete data. When the CEO asked about my leadership philosophy, I drew on real experiences managing difficult team dynamics and turning around underperforming projects. The whole presentation lasted 45 minutes, and I could tell from their body language and follow-up questions that it had gone exceptionally well. Jennifer walked me out afterward and squeezed my shoulder, saying, "That was exactly what they needed to hear. I'm proud of you." By 3 p.m., I had an official offer, Director of Marketing Strategy, with a salary that was actually 35% higher than my current role, plus equity options, and a budget to hire 2 additional team members. Jennifer called me into her office and handed me the offer letter with a genuine smile. "Eliza, you earned this. Your presentation was one of the strongest I've seen, and everyone in that room recognized your potential." I called Patricia first, and she actually squealed. This composed, professional woman literally squealed with excitement. "I told you this was your moment. I'm so proud of you. This is just the beginning of what you're going to accomplish." We planned a celebration dinner for the following night, and I felt like I was floating as I drove home. That evening, I decided to call my parents again. Despite the discouraging conversation the previous week, these were still my parents, and some part of me hoped they'd surprise me with genuine excitement about my success. My mom answered again, and when I told her the news, she gasped and said, "Oh my goodness, Eliza, that's wonderful. Let me get your father." I waited, listening to her excited voice calling him to the phone, feeling hopeful that maybe this time would be different. When he picked up, I launched into the story, how well the presentation had gone, the positive feedback from the executives, the impressive salary increase, and the growth opportunities this position would create. The silence that followed lasted so long, I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally he spoke, and his words hit me like a physical blow. "You don't deserve a celebration." I literally couldn't speak for a moment. "What, Eliza? I think you're getting carried away with yourself. This promotion probably has more to do with them needing to fill a quota than with your actual qualifications. Companies have to promote women and young people these days, even if they're not really ready for the responsibility." My mom's voice in the background, "Robert, that's not, no Linda. She needs to hear this. Eliza, success should make you humble, not arrogant. The fact that you're calling to brag about this promotion tells me you're not approaching this with the right attitude." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Dad, I'm not bragging. I'm sharing good news with my family because I thought you'd be proud of me." Pride comes before a fall, Eliza. I've seen plenty of people get promoted beyond their capabilities and then fail spectacularly. Instead of planning some big celebration, maybe you should be thinking about how you're going to prove you deserve this opportunity. "I already proved I deserve it," I said, and my voice was shaking. "That's why they gave it to me." "We'll see," he said, and there was something cold in his tone that I'd never heard before. "We'll see how long you last once the real pressure starts." After I hung up, I sat on my couch staring at the offer letter, feeling like someone had stolen something precious from me. This should have been one of the happiest days of my professional life, and instead I felt angry, confused, and deeply hurt. Why couldn't my own father celebrate my achievement? Why did he seem to need to tear down something I'd worked so hard for? But his next move was something I never could have anticipated. The following Monday, as I was settling into my first day in the new role, Jennifer called me into her office with a concerned expression. "Eliza, I need to ask you about something unusual. We received a phone call this morning from someone claiming to be your father." My stomach dropped. "What kind of phone call?" "He called our main number and asked to speak with HR about concerns regarding your promotion. When they transferred him to me, he spent 10 minutes telling me that he was worried we'd promoted you too quickly, that you might not be ready for this level of responsibility, and that he thought we should consider whether this was the right decision." I felt the blood drain from my face. He called my workplace to undermine my promotion. "It gets worse," Jennifer said gently. "He specifically mentioned that he was concerned about your emotional stability, and suggested that your enthusiasm about the role indicated you might be getting ahead of yourself. He actually asked if we had considered promoting someone with more experience instead." I couldn't process what I was hearing. My own father had called my employer to sabotage my career advancement. What did you tell him? I told him that our hiring decisions are based on merit and performance, and that his call was inappropriate. Then I hung up and immediately called HR to document the incident. Eliza, I need you to know that this doesn't change anything about your promotion. Your qualifications speak for themselves. But I'm concerned about what this means for your family dynamics. That afternoon, HR called me for a meeting with Sarah Chen, the head of human resources. She was professional but warm, and she got straight to the point. Eliza, we've had an unusual situation arise that I need to discuss with you. A man claiming to be your father contacted our company this morning, attempting to interfere with your employment. She pulled out a file and read from her notes. The caller identified himself as Robert Peters, and stated that he had concerns about your recent promotion. He suggested that you were not ready for director-level responsibilities, and implied that our decision was questionable. When transferred to your direct supervisor, he continued to undermine your qualifications, and suggested we reconsider our decision. My hands were shaking as I listened. I had no idea he was going to do that. Of course you didn't, Sarah said firmly. This type of interference is completely inappropriate and frankly concerning. We want you to know that we took immediate action. I personally called him back and informed him that any future attempts to contact our company regarding your employment would be considered harassment and could result in legal action. You called him back? I did. I told him that his behavior was unprofessional and potentially damaging to your career, and that if he had concerns about your capabilities, those concerns were not supported by your performance record. I also made it clear that Eliza Peters was promoted based on merit, and that his attempt to undermine that decision was inappropriate and unwelcome. Sarah leaned forward with a serious expression. Eliza, I also want you to know that this incident has been documented in our system, not as anything negative about you, but as a record of attempted external interference with our employment decisions. If this escalates, we have a paper trail. Thank you. I managed to say. I'm so embarrassed that this happened. You have nothing to be embarrassed about, Sarah said. You are not responsible for other people's inappropriate behavior, even if they're family members. Your promotion was earned and deserved, and we stand behind that decision completely. When I got home that evening, I had 17 missed calls from my father, and a series of increasingly angry text messages. The first few claimed he was trying to help and protect me from making a mistake, but as I read through them, his true motivation became clear. Your attitude about this promotion is exactly what I was worried about. I called your company because someone needs to look out for your best interests. You're too immature to handle this kind of responsibility, and I wasn't going to let you embarrass yourself. If you were really qualified for this job, you wouldn't need me to point out the problems. And finally, maybe now you'll understand that success requires humility, not arrogance. I called Patricia, and she listened to the entire story in stunned silence. When I finished, she said, Eliza, what your father did goes beyond unsupportive. This was active sabotage. He tried to damage your professional reputation and undermine your career advancement. That's not concern, that's malicious. But he's my dad, I said, even as I was saying it, knowing how weak it sounded. Being your father doesn't give him the right to sabotage your success, Patricia said firmly. Think about this. If a colleague, or a friend, or even a stranger had called your workplace to undermine your promotion, what would you call that behavior? Sabotage, I admitted. Exactly. The fact that he's your father makes it worse, not better, because he's supposed to be in your corner. That night, I finally called him back. When he answered, his voice carried that self-righteous tone that told me he believed he'd done the right thing. Eliza, I hope you've had time to think about what I said. Dad, you called my workplace. You tried to get my promotion revoked. I tried to save you from a situation you're not ready for. Someone needs to look out for your best interests since you're clearly not thinking clearly about this. My best interests? You tried to destroy my professional reputation. I tried to prevent you from destroying it yourself, he shot back. You're 28 years old, Eliza. You don't have the experience or the wisdom to handle a director-level position. I was trying to protect you from failing publicly. Protect me, Dad. I earned this promotion. My performance speaks for itself. Your performance in a junior role doesn't qualify you for senior leadership, he said dismissively. But you're too arrogant to see that. You think because some supervisor gave you a pat on the head, you're ready to run a department. I felt something shift inside me, a clarity I'd never experienced before. Dad, what you did was sabotage, pure and simple. You tried to damage my career, because you can't handle my success. Success? He laughed, and the sound was cruel. Eliza, you haven't achieved anything yet. You got a promotion you probably don't deserve, and instead of being grateful and humble, you're acting like you've conquered the world. I called your company because someone needed to inject some reality into this situation. The reality is that I'm good at my job. The reality is that my employer values my contributions. The reality is that you called my workplace to undermine me because you can't stand to see me succeed. If that's what you think, then you're even more naive than I thought, he said coldly. But go ahead, Eliza. Prove me wrong. Try to handle this job you think you're so qualified for. When you fail, and you will fail, don't come crying to me for support. I won't, I said, and hung up. The next few weeks were a blur of trying to focus on my new responsibilities while processing the betrayal and hurt from my father's actions. Patricia checked in with me daily, sometimes just a text asking how I was holding up, sometimes longer phone calls where she helped me process the complex emotions I was experiencing. My colleagues at work were incredibly supportive, especially after Jennifer discreetly let a few key people know that there had been inappropriate external interference with my promotion that had been handled by HR. My mom called a few days later, her voice tentative and uncertain. Eliza, your father told me about your conversation. I think maybe there was a misunderstanding. Mom, there was no misunderstanding. Dad called my workplace to try to get my promotion revoked. He told my employer that I wasn't qualified for the job and suggested they reconsider their decision. He was just worried about you, she said, weakly. Worried people don't sabotage their children's careers, Mom. Worried people offer support and encouragement. Maybe he went about it the wrong way, but his intentions were to undermine my success because he couldn't handle it, I said firmly. And Mom, the fact that you're making excuses for him tells me that you think what he did was okay. I just think families should be able to work through these kinds of conflicts. This isn't a conflict, Mom. This is sabotage. And until Dad acknowledges what he did and apologizes, I'm not interested in working through anything. She was quiet for a long moment. Eliza, he's your father. Then he should act like it, I said. In my new role, I threw myself into the work with an intensity that surprised even me. Within the first month, I'd restructured our client onboarding process to reduce turnaround time by 20%, implemented a new project management system that improved team communication, and successfully pitched a major new client that brought in $200,000 in revenue. Every success felt like proof that my father had been wrong about my capabilities. But the emotional processing was harder. I found myself replaying conversations from years past, recognizing patterns I'd previously dismissed or rationalized. The time he'd told me my college graduation was just the beginning, and I shouldn't get too excited about my accomplishments. The way he'd responded to my first promotion at Pinnacle with concerns about whether I was taking on too much too fast. The consistent pattern of deflating my enthusiasm and undermining my confidence, always disguised as concern for my well-being. Patricia helped me understand that this was a form of emotional abuse, the systematic undermining of someone's confidence and achievements to maintain control over them. Your father has been conditioning you for years to seek his approval and doubt your own judgment, she explained during one of our coffee meetings. When you started succeeding beyond his expectations, he escalated to direct sabotage because the subtle undermining wasn't working anymore. But why? I asked. Why would a parent want to hold their child back? Some people can only feel good about themselves by keeping others small, she said sadly. Your success threatens his sense of superiority. Instead of celebrating your achievements, he needs to diminish them to maintain his position as the authority figure in your life. 3 months after the promotion incident, I was thriving professionally but still processing the emotional fallout. That's when my father made his next move. I was at the office late on a Thursday working on a quarterly strategy presentation when my phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Eliza Peters? Yes? This is Detective Williams with Metro Police. We've received a wellness check request for your address. A Robert Peters called and said he was concerned about your mental health and wanted us to check on your well-being. My stomach dropped. I'm sorry, what? Your father called our non-emergency line and said he was worried you might be having a mental health crisis. He said you'd been making erratic decisions and he hadn't heard from you in several weeks. He requested that we do a wellness check. I felt sick. Detective, I'm fine. I'm at work right now. My father and I had a disagreement several months ago and we haven't been in contact since then, but I'm absolutely fine. Ma'am, I figured there might be more to this story. These family welfare calls often involve some kind of dispute. Do you have any concerns about your safety or well-being? No, Detective. I'm concerned about my father using emergency services to harass me, but I'm not in any danger. Understood. I'm going to document this call and note that the wellness check was unnecessary. If your father continues to contact us with these types of requests, we may need to have a conversation with him about appropriate use of emergency services. After I hung up, I sat in my office staring out at the city lights, realizing that my father wasn't going to stop. First he'd tried to sabotage my career, and now he was trying to make me look unstable by involving the police. I called Patricia, who was predictably outraged. This is escalation, Eliza. He's not just undermining you anymore, he's actively trying to damage your reputation and credibility. You need to document everything and consider getting legal advice. That weekend, I compiled a timeline of events: the initial phone call to my workplace, the text messages, the police wellness check, and several other incidents I'd previously dismissed as just dad being dad. Looking at it all together, the pattern was undeniable: systematic harassment designed to undermine my independence and success. On Monday, I made an appointment with an attorney who specialized in family harassment cases. Jessica Morales was recommended by a colleague, and she listened to my story with the kind of professional focus that told me she'd heard similar situations before. What your father is doing constitutes harassment, she said after reviewing my documentation. The workplace interference could be considered intentional interference with business relations, and the false police report is definitely problematic. You have grounds for a restraining order if you want to pursue that option. I don't want to take legal action against my father, I said. I just want him to stop. Sometimes legal boundaries are the only thing that gets through to people who don't respect personal boundaries, Jessica said gently. Think about it this way. If this behavior escalates, having a paper trail with law enforcement and the courts could be important for your protection. I decided to try one more direct approach before involving the legal system. I wrote my father a letter, not an email or text that could be misinterpreted, but a formal, certified letter that would leave no room for ambiguity. Dad, your recent actions have crossed lines that I never imagined a parent would cross. Calling my workplace to undermine my promotion was sabotage, not concern. Calling the police to request a wellness check was harassment, not care. I am successful, stable, and happy in my life and career. If you cannot support my achievements, then I need you to stay out of my professional and personal life entirely. Any further attempts to interfere with my work, contact my employer, or involve third parties in our family dispute will be considered harassment, and I will pursue legal remedies. If you want to have a relationship with me, it needs to be based on respect for my autonomy and achievements, not attempts to control or undermine me. I sent the letter via certified mail and waited. The response came a week later, and it was everything I expected and worse. Eliza, your letter confirms everything I was worried about. You've become arrogant and disrespectful, and you're obviously surrounded by people who are encouraging your worst impulses. The fact that you're threatening legal action against your own father shows how far you've fallen from the values we raised you with. I was trying to help you, but clearly you don't want help. You want to surround yourself with people who tell you what you want to hear instead of what you need to hear. When this job becomes too much for you, and it will, don't expect me to be there to pick up the pieces. You've made your choice. Reading that letter, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with sadness. The relief came from finally seeing his behavior with complete clarity. There was no misunderstanding, no good intentions gone wrong, no parental concern being expressed poorly. This was deliberate sabotage from someone who couldn't handle my success. The sadness was for the father I'd always hoped he could be, and the realization that he would never celebrate my achievements the way a loving parent should. I called my mom one last time to see if there was any possibility of healing the relationship without requiring my father to acknowledge his harmful behavior. "Mom, I sent Dad a letter asking him to stop interfering with my career and my life. His response made it clear that he has no intention of changing his behavior. Eliza, family is family. You only get one father." "I know, Mom, but I also only get one career, one life, and one chance to build healthy relationships. Dad has actively tried to sabotage my professional success. That's not something I can ignore or get over. Can't you just agree to disagree about this promotion thing?" "Mom, this isn't about a disagreement. Dad called my workplace to try to get my promotion revoked. He called the police to make false claims about my mental health. These aren't differences of opinion, these are attempts to damage my reputation and career." She was quiet for a long moment. "Antoine, what do you want me to do, Eliza? Choose between you and your father. I want you to acknowledge that what he did was wrong and harmful. I want you to stop making excuses for behavior that you would never tolerate from anyone else. He's not perfect, but he loves you. People who love you don't sabotage your success, Mom. They celebrate it." "Eliza, I can't get in the middle of this. By not getting in the middle, you're choosing his side," I said sadly. "You're telling me that maintaining peace with him is more important than acknowledging the harm he's caused me. That's not fair. What's not fair is asking me to pretend that sabotage is love," I said. "Mom, I love you, but I can't have a relationship with people who support or enable Dad's behavior. When you're ready to acknowledge what he did and set appropriate boundaries, I'll be here. But I won't pretend that harassment is normal family conflict." After that conversation, I made the difficult decision to step back from my family entirely. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but I realized that trying to maintain relationships with people who supported or enabled my father's sabotage was too damaging to my mental health and professional success. The hardest part was holidays. Thanksgiving came and went with invitations I politely declined. Christmas was painful, not because I missed the dysfunction, but because I grieved for the family traditions I'd always hoped could exist without the undercurrent of criticism and control. But professionally, I was flourishing in ways I'd never imagined possible. By December, 6 months into my director role, I'd exceeded every performance metric. Our client retention rate had improved by 22%, we'd brought in over $1 million in new business, and my team had won an industry award for innovative campaign strategy. The CEO pulled me aside during our holiday party and said, "Eliza, your leadership this year has been exceptional. We're creating a VP-level position for you in the new fiscal year." When Patricia heard the news, she insisted on taking me to dinner at the city's most upscale restaurant. The kind of place with cloth napkins and wine lists that require sommelier consultation. "This is what celebration looks like," she said, raising her glass of champagne. "This is what people who love you do when you succeed. They don't try to diminish it or control it or sabotage it. They amplify it." That night I realized that my father's betrayal had actually given me an unexpected gift. By trying to sabotage my success, he'd forced me to defend it, to own it completely, and to surround myself only with people who genuinely supported my growth. I'd learned to celebrate my achievements without seeking approval from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it. 6 months later, my father reached out through my grandmother, who called to say he wanted to work things out, and was ready to put this whole thing behind us. When I asked if he acknowledged that calling my workplace was inappropriate, and if he was prepared to apologize for attempting to sabotage my career, the answer was no. He thought we should just move forward without dwelling on past misunderstandings. "Grandma," I said gently, "sabotaging someone's career isn't a misunderstanding, it's a choice. Until dad can acknowledge the harm he caused and take responsibility for his actions, there's nothing to work out. But he's your father, Eliza. He loves you. I know he thinks he does, Grandma. But love doesn't try to destroy what someone has worked hard to build. Today, 18 months after my promotion, I'm preparing for my new role as Vice President of Strategic Development. My team has grown from 3 people to 12, and we're opening a satellite office to handle our expanded client base. I've been invited to speak at industry conferences about innovative marketing strategies, and I'm being featured in a business magazine article about young executives driving change in the tech sector. I still have occasional moments of sadness about my family, especially during major milestones when I wish I had parents who could genuinely celebrate with me. But I've built a chosen family of people who understand that real love supports growth, celebrates achievements, and stands up for the people they care about when others try to tear them down. Patricia is still my mentor and close friend, and she recently told me something that summarized everything I've learned. Eliza, your father tried to keep you small because he couldn't handle your growth. But by refusing to stay small, you not only saved your career, you saved yourself. The most important lesson I've learned through this experience is that you cannot have authentic relationships with people who need you to fail in order for them to feel good about themselves. Some people, even family members, are so threatened by your success that they will actively work to undermine it. When that happens, protecting your achievements and your well-being isn't selfish. It's necessary. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own life, I want you to know that you deserve people who celebrate your success, not sabotage it. You deserve family members who build you up, not tear you down. And you deserve to protect your achievements from people who would destroy them out of their own insecurity. Your success is not something you need to minimize to make other people comfortable. Your achievements are not arrogance. They're evidence of your hard work and capability. And if someone in your life cannot handle your growth, that's their limitation, not your failure. I know how hard it is to set boundaries with family members who frame their destructive behavior as love or concern. I know how difficult it is to choose your well-being over maintaining peace in relationships that were never actually peaceful. But I also know that protecting yourself from people who sabotage your success is one of the most important things you can do for your future. You don't owe anyone the right to diminish your achievements. You don't owe anyone access to your success, so they can tear it down. And you certainly don't owe anyone a relationship that requires you to make yourself smaller to accommodate their insecurities. If you've experienced family sabotage of your professional or personal success, please share your story in the comments. Let others know that they're not alone in dealing with people who should support them, but instead try to undermine them. And if you're currently in a situation where family members are actively working against your achievements, know that choosing to protect your success from sabotage isn't abandonment, it's self-preservation. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about setting boundaries with toxic family members and building success despite those who try to hold you back. And remember, your achievements are valid, your success is deserved, and you have every right to protect both from people who would destroy them, even if those people are family. Your growth threatens their control, and that's exactly why you need to keep growing.